Hi guys, Jane here, and I am doing my November wrap-up. I participated in Nonfiction November this month, and everything that I read was nonfiction. It was an okay reading month. I had 2 books I DNF'd, and I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that I finished. So, not bad. I want to talk first about the books that I DNF'd. So I'm getting my Kindle out so I can Alright, the first book that I ended up DNFing was The Warner Boys by Anna and Curtis Warner. And it is their kind of their memoir, their family story of autism. And they have twin boys with autism, the 2 younger ones there. And it was kind of just their story, their family story. It wasn't a bad book. It just, I had trouble feeling super engaged, which was sad because I have a child that has oppositional defiance disorder. That's not autism, but it's definitely like behavioral issues. So there were certain things in the book I really related to, like they were doing stuff to change the boys' diets to see if that would help, and we've had to do that. We took out dyes for my daughter because she would have these rages. I mean, just so angry. She would get so angry that like literally her cheeks would bleed, and we called the doctor about it, and they said that she was raising her blood pressure so much. So by cutting out dyes, we made a lot of changes with that. And also like some of the behavioral stuff and the, developmental issues that are common with autism, we have to a certain degree with oppositional defiance disorder. My daughter is not trustworthy to do a lot of things age appropriately. She gets into a lot of things. She doesn't have very good ability to make good decisions about things. She doesn't see dangers. So like I related to the book. I had a hard time getting into it. I think part of it for me was just it started off so slow. And it very much, they did a biography on the mom and the dad, and I guess the dad was some football player at some point. It wasn't a bad book. I lost interest. I got about 3/4 through, and I just was like, I'm done. So that was my first DNF of the month. My second DNF of the month, and I was so sad to do this one because a lot of people love this, is The Library Book by Susan Orlean. And I'm sorry, it's very shiny, so it's not showing up very well. This book is about a library that burned down in California. And they were investigating the person that did it, and I couldn't get into this one either. I got about 100 pages in, and it wasn't very interesting. I didn't love it. So I tried, and about 100 pages in, I was like, I'm just not interested enough in this book to continue. This is the large print, so my 100 pages in is probably a little different than your 100 pages in if you are reading the typical volume of it. But yeah, it wasn't for me. It just didn't interest me enough to keep me in. So now I will go to the books that I did actually finish this month and that I did for the most part enjoy. Now the books that I didn't finish are not going to get a review. Everything else probably will have a review, and it either will be up in December or has already been uploaded. I try to upload one review a week, so if it hasn't been uploaded yet, it's coming. Because I'm going to do uploads, I'm not going to take a really long time on each of these books. I'm just going to give you a basic overview. I read Life's Work, A Moral Argument for Choice by Dr. Willie Parker, and I gave this a 4 out of 5. This is about a doctor whose life work is providing abortions for women who are not able to get them easily. He works in a clinic in Mississippi, and it's like the only clinic in Mississippi where abortions are available. It talks a lot about the different arguments for abortion. And Dr. Parker is actually a Christian, so it was really nice and interesting to see his view on abortion from a Christian perspective. He feels like it is his duty as a Christian to provide abortions, actually, especially for women in populations where there is a higher need, where life is complicated. So, good book. There were some things I didn't love about it. Particularly, he had some ideas about where our dislike of and laws about abortion have come from that I wasn't necessarily sure I agreed with. For instance, that people who are the people who are arguing for pro-choice aren't really necessarily arguing for the life of the fetus, but they're kind of trying to keep a white majority in the world. I wasn't sure I agreed with some of that stuff, but overall, a good book, worth the read. The next book, and it is on my Kindle, so just give me a moment, bear with me. The next book I finished this month was Launch to Market, Easy Marketing for Authors by Chris Fox. And this book was a 3 out of 5 for me. It was kind of short, and the information was stuff that I'd heard before. There wasn't too much that was earth-shattering. It was good. It was worth the read, but it's not, to me, the Bible of book launches. I am a huge fan of Chris Fox in general, and I definitely recommend following his YouTube and learning from him because he has a lot of good information. That book probably is more valuable to somebody who is starting out as a writer than somebody who's a few years in. So that was my thoughts on that book. The next book I read was A Mother's Reckoning, Living in the Aftermath of Tragedy by Sue Klebold. And this is the story of, it is the memoir, I guess, of Sue Klebold. She is the mother of Dylan Klebold, who was one of the Columbine shooters. And this talks about like how they heard about Columbine, how they found out about their son's involvement, the feelings and journey they had about that, and what happened afterwards. She became a huge advocate for mental health because there was a view that they had that Dylan, her son, was suicidal rather than homicidal in the whole Columbine thing. I gave this book a 4 out of 5. Overall, I really, really enjoyed it. It's heart-wrenching to read. It is very difficult to read, but it was a very good book. It was definitely the good message of, she'd lost a child too, and it was harder for her to heal because everybody's just like, they kind of grouped her in with her son. She must be a monster. And, she'd done the best she could. She had no idea what was happening. Her son was 17. He was just a few months from graduating. It's not something you expect your child to ever do. So I really enjoyed this book. I do highly recommend it, though it is such an emotional, difficult read. A couple people that I did want to mention this, a couple people in reviews had been kind of critical of her, saying that she blamed Columbine a lot on Eric, who was the other of the Columbine killers. I didn't feel that was an issue with this book. They do bring it up kind of that Columbine couldn't have happened without Eric, but I think that's just a reality. I've read online there are journal entries from both boys, and they had different perspectives / motives. Like, I'm not saying Dylan is any less culpable. He was there, he killed people, and it looks like he fired about the same number of bullets and things as Eric did. So he's definitely, I'm not defending him, and his mom is not defending him, but at the same time, I think there is a lot of truth in Eric was the one that was like, we should kill people, versus Dylan, who was more along the suicidal and probably would have just killed himself. Had left to his own devices, he probably wouldn't have been the one that said, I want revenge on the school. And that was what professionals had told her. Sorry for my voice. I've been under the weather this whole month. So anyway, good book. I recommend. Oh my gosh, hard to read, heartbreaking, but definitely a good one. The next one is The Wisdom of Wolves. Lessons from the Sawtooth Pack by Jim and Jamie Dutcher. So the things this was a 4 out of 5 for me also. This follows a wolf pack, the Sawtooth wolf pack, and talks about different things about wolf life. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the wolves. The only thing that kind of didn't do it for me with this book was that it didn't follow a wild wolf pack. These wolves had been hand-fed. They're living in an enclosure. They're not even hunting. I mean, they're being given roadkill to eat. So not quite the same as like following a wild wolf pack. Still, it was interesting. There was a lot about wolf behavior that I didn't know. And if you like wolves, this is probably worth the read. If you've read much about wolf behavior, I don't know that you'll get any amazing insights into it, but it was nice, and there's beautiful pictures of the wolves. Let me see if I can find a good one here. But yeah, don't expect, there's pictures of the wolves, and it's a beautiful book, but they aren't wild exactly, and yeah. But you'll learn about wolves if you haven't ever wondered about wolf behavior, and if this is like the first book on wolf behavior, it's not a bad one. But again, for me, that really was hard, like that they weren't wild wolves. They did the writers did consult with some experts who deal with wild wolves and found that the behaviors were for the most part consistent. But yeah. The next book I read was The Artist's Journey. And this one was a 3 out of 5 for me. This was kind of a person's perspective on why people become artists. And basically, they go through this thing where they're saying, okay, people go on a hero's journey, and then they become artists because that's what they bring back from their hero's journey. And they tried to tie it into like the hero's journey and create an artist's journey to go with it. And it wasn't for me. It was not very practical. There wasn't a lot of practical, like, hey, here's how to be a better artist. It was more like, here's why we think people become artists, and artists are amazing. And yeah, it was okay. It just wasn't for me. And the last book that I read in the month of November was Factfulness. And I gave this a 4 out of 5. This is a really, really good book. Basically, it uses math to say that the world is in a lot better of a place than we often think it is. With social media stuff, we have a lot of views on the world as being, scary and dangerous, and terrorism and plane crashes. And so many people have this view that the world is just a big, scary place and getting worse and worse every year. And the reality, according to the math, according to this writer, is that that's not really true. And I've kind of had that view for a long time, considering I study a lot of history. We definitely have lots that we can improve on in the world, but we're at a better place than we've been basically ever. As far as, there's less people starving to death. There is, a little bit more peace. I think we have this view that we are in the worst times possible. And being raised religious, that was one of the things we were told, oh, the world is falling apart. It's the end of the world because it's so bad. And, the scriptures and Bible say that it's going to get terrible, terrible near the end of the world. And we're in the end times. We'd always been raised to think that. But this book says that according to the math, we're doing pretty well. More people than ever are not living in poverty. More people than ever are not starving to death. More kids than ever are living to adulthood. Less women are dying in childbirth. Less babies are dying in their early years. What else is there? Most people have access to water, clean water. Most people have access to food. There are things that are rough in our society, but almost hands down, compared to 50 or 100 years ago, we are so much better off, and the math says so. So that, I loved this book. I thought it was really good. It was close to being a 5 for me. If it was a little less boring in parts, it was close to a 5. I really enjoyed that book, and I recommend, of all the books I read this month, Factfulness is one I think everybody should read. This is my number 1 for the month of the best book I read and what I think everybody should read. I also think most people should read Living in the Aftermath of Tragedy. If you can stomach it, it's a hard read. And a lot of people should read Life's Work, especially if you are open-minded about abortion. So, yeah, it was a good month. I am looking forward to getting back into some fiction next month, though, because while I enjoy nonfiction, I didn't read any fiction this month, and I'm ready for it. All right, guys, like, subscribe, social media is down below, and until next time, bye.